All right, hello everyone. This is the Granger Avenue Traffic Calming Meeting number 2. On behalf of the City of Ann Arbor, I'd like to thank you all for joining us again, giving us this opportunity to engage with community members. These traffic calming projects are resident initiated efforts, so without your participation, they wouldn't be possible. If you didn't get a chance to take the demographic poll, we will relaunch it at the end of the meeting. So it's been a few months since our first meeting. We may have some new attendees that weren't at the last meeting, so I'll introduce our team. My name is Christy Thullen. I'll be presenting tonight. I'm an engineer in training at Wade Trim Associates, working in transportation with our traffic group. Wade Trim is an engineering firm based in Southeast Michigan, though we have a lot of locations outside of Michigan and within the state. I've been working with Lori Pollock and Chris Wall, who are both professional traffic engineers at Wade Trim. And we've been working on the Granger Avenue project on behalf of the city of Ann Arbor and their traffic calming program. So our overall role is to facilitate these public engagement opportunities and then provide technical guidance on some of the designs that we propose. And tonight, Lori is joining me. She'll be assisting with monitoring the Q&A and answering questions. Because we're working on behalf of the city of Ann Arbor, we've been working fairly closely with the city's engineering staff. Andrea Wright is an engineering analyst for the city and is the traffic calming program facilitator. She's provided Wade Trim with a lot of the resources necessary to make this partnership as seamless as possible. And then Cyrus Nahidi, he's a professional engineer. He's provided a lot of the technical background information on the project area. He's been our point of contact to make sure any of the designs that we propose are in line with city standards and practices, and just helping us make sure that what we propose or what we come up with is feasible, is something that fits in with the rest of the city's designs. So here's our meeting agenda for tonight. Most of tonight's time will be dedicated to the traffic calming process, where we'll review and discuss each of the devices. But as a refresher, the next few slides are just a technology overview. If you're joining from a computer or using the Zoom app, there are 2 ways of asking questions or providing feedback. You can press the raise hand icon at the bottom of your screen. This will notify Lori and myself that you'd like to speak. When you're recognized to speak, one of us will allow you to unmute, and then you can also lower your hand with that same icon. And if you'd rather type a question or comment out, you can press the Q&A icon right next to the raise hand button, and a chat box will appear, allowing you to type in the text box, hit send. If you want to send your feedback anonymously, just make sure you check that box there. And then if you called into the meeting by phone, you may request to speak by dialing *9. You'll be recognized to speak by the last 3 digits of your phone number. One of us will unmute you, and then you can speak. If you're dialing in by phone, you won't be able to use the Q&A function, but you will be able to raise your hand and ask to speak. Also, there are going to be multiple points throughout the presentation where we'll request feedback using the polling feature. Again, if you're on a computer or using the app and a poll is launched, it'll just automatically pop up for you. After you answer the polling question, press submit. When the poll closes, the results will automatically pop up for you. Just press close to stop viewing those. And then again, if you're calling in by phone, I'll read the question and any available responses out loud. To participate in the poll, you'll have to raise your hand by pressing *9. Again, you'll be recognized to speak by the last 3 digits of your phone number. I'll unmute you. You'll have a chance to answer, and then you'll be placed on mute after. Just so to know, computer or app polling is anonymous. to the attendees, but phone polling won't be. So just as a test, I'll launch the first poll here related to the project. Question reads, do you live in the project area? Your options are yes or no. And then after everyone has answered, we'll share the results. They'll pop up for you. You can press close to close them out. And I can also stop sharing as well. Perfect. So it looks like everyone here is within the project area, so that's really helpful. And then last thing before we jump into the project itself are just the Zoom meeting norms. During the presentation, and especially during any feedback from fellow community members, please keep these in mind. Start on time, end on time. Usually these second meetings are a little shorter, so you don't have to worry too much about it, but I do want to be conscious of everyone's time. I know it's at the end of the day, and many people are trying to squeeze this in maybe after regular work hours. So raise your hand to be recognized to talk. There will only be one speaker at a time. If you are speaking, please move to a quiet area, silence any background noises when speaking. Please speak loud and clear so everyone can hear you. We'll provide a chance to speak. We'll provide everyone a chance to speak before we have any repeat speakers. Please be respectful of other ideas and perspectives. Avoid finger pointing. Try to differentiate between I know and I think. And lastly, any inappropriate written and or verbal comment or language, including personal attacks and accusations, will result in that attendee being removed from the meeting. So I'll encourage you to use the Q&A function freely. We'll be monitoring and responding to questions or comments as they come in. We'll also try to recognize speakers as soon as we can. There are, like I said, there are multiple chances throughout the presentation for feedback. And just to keep with our agenda and schedule time, we may wait to answer some of those questions in the Q&A to answer them live during those slots throughout the presentation. But if there's anything that you'd like to add, I'll pause real quick and you can either raise your hand or use the Q&A, but we'll just take a breath here, or at least I will. All right, I'm not seeing anything, so I'll move on. All right, you're looking at the preliminary plan for Granger Avenue. This design, what you're seeing here is based on feedback from meeting number 1 that we had back in February. We had proposed our initial starter idea, which had been based on just our first look at the street, looking at the feedback from the initial petition and that initial questionnaire that had been mailed out to project area residents. During meeting number 1, we had proposed a starter idea. We had answered questions. We heard some feedback from meeting attendees, both resident and non-residents who were interested in the area. Ultimately, our design does focus on what the petition residents are looking for. So we made a couple adjustments to the initial starter idea. Prior to today's meeting, a mailing package with device descriptions had been sent out to project area residents and owners. We also set up a self-guided tour that had descriptions available at each device location. They were marked in spray paint. And as a refresher, we'll just review the device that's actually used in this plan. So this is just a aerial image. You can see we have 2 devices that we're proposing. They are both the same. So I'll just do a little overview of what a raised crosswalk is. So this is a raised crosswalk. The example shown in the photo is on Forest Avenue near Woodlawn Avenue. Raised crosswalks are raised devices. They extend the full width of the street except for the gutter. They're typically 18 feet long with tapered edges and a flat 6-foot center platform marked with crosswalk striping. They're typically raised 3 inches high. Raised crosswalks are shown to reduce traffic speeds, volumes, and crashes. They're shown to increase pedestrian visibility being raised. When they are installed, they must be compliant with the American Disabilities Act. So that's providing safe ramp access for any persons with disabilities. They're also designed for bicycle safety, and they have a minimal impact to emergency vehicle response time. Were there any questions about a raised crosswalk in general? We'll pause here again for any Q&A or raised hands if anyone wanted to speak. And I'm not seeing anything still, so we'll move on. So the aerial view of the whole plan, both devices are the same. So this is a little repetitive, but device number 1 is at the Forest Avenue intersection. So originally we had proposed a curb extension or a bump out just right here with no crosswalk. We had just proposed a bump out there. But after hearing feedback and discussing other device options, we are now proposing a raised crosswalk with ramps, with sidewalk ramps. This case was a little unique. The initial questionnaire feedback that we had received indicated that a lot of the petition residents that you wanted a pedestrian crossing for Granger Avenue because there aren't any there right now. Like you've got the crossing here to cross along Granger, but there aren't any points to safely cross or designated spots to cross on Granger. So the new crosswalks or crosswalks in general or sidewalk ramps, those are outside of the traffic calming program. Initially, we did not address that because they fall outside of the program. They are initiated through the city's sidewalk program. But after some internal discussion with the city's engineering department, they've agreed to work on this coordination internally. So you see in the drawing, there are some sidewalk ramps and connections that we're proposing. I want to point out that they may not all be installed at the exact same time. Like when they install the raised device, there might be a period between installing the two, but the project team was comfortable showing them in this design because we know that the coordination will be in place. Like I said, originally when we proposed the curb extension, it was to support like a hypothetical crosswalk because we thought, at some point, if residents would like to have a crosswalk, then, residents could petition or put in a request for that crosswalk. But again, after working with the rest of the engineering department, the traffic calming program, they'll do the behind the scenes work because that's what a lot of it is. I think from the perspective of a resident, it seems silly to have to fill out 2 different applications for, these 2 things that are supposed to work together. So a lot of that is just behind the scenes work that the engineering department and the traffic calming program has already agreed to take care of. So I'll say that's why we changed this to a raised crosswalk, because we weren't really building on around like a hypothetical. So I will pause here if anyone has questions about this or anything that I just explained. I'll pause here for you for a few moments. So I'm not seeing any questions or comments on this. So I'll try to get some feedback from you if possible. Um, do you support the raise? The question reads, do you support device number 1, raised crosswalk? So this is the raised crosswalk that we just saw that's at the Forest Avenue intersection. Oh, cool. I've got results here that I'll share with you. So it seems like everyone in this room is supportive of this. So this is good. If there is anything, any additional context or any, sometimes we support something, there might be a but. So please feel free to add whatever context you may feel is necessary. The next slide is basically the exact same thing. It's a raised crosswalk again with proposed sidewalk ramps, but this is at the other end of the project area. This is at the Olivia Avenue intersection. Again, the original proposal was just a curb extension here, but now that we know there's an internal agreement to put these sidewalk ramps, these sidewalk connections in, we can put a raised crosswalk. So that way there's a designated marked area. It is a raised device. So as I went over before, raised devices are shown to help slow traffic down. And I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, that the initial questionnaire, the majority of responses had said, aside from wanting a place to cross on Granger, majority of the responses had said that speeding is the major issue of down this block that people are flying through. And I will point out that having more than one raised device in a series, or having a series of raised devices, is what helps make them most effective. If we were to just, I think our original idea was to have the curb extensions on either end and just a speed hump in the middle of the block, which, not to say that it wouldn't do anything, but having a series of those raised devices can help us reinforce traffic calming through the entire block. So again, I'll pause if there's any questions related to the raised crosswalk or the raised crosswalk specifically at this location. And I'm not seeing anything. So again, we'll launch the poll question for feedback on this. The question reads, do you support device number 2, raised crosswalk? And I'll share the results. So again, it looks like we have full support for this device. This meeting is becoming very short, a lot shorter than I anticipated, but just to go back, pull out to the high level. So this is what our preliminary plan looks like. If we have any additional feedback between now and the next month, we would make adjustments, but based on feedback that we had received outside this meeting and here, it sounds like at least a handful of the residents within the polling area support this. It will be when we may make our final plan and present that. I'll just point out that the plan is approved the plan is approved as a whole. So I know I poll each device separately, but at the end of this, when we do the final poll, it'll be, do you support this plan as a whole? So it is, I do want to point that out because sometimes there's confusion with that. And I do have a question here that I will answer. Question is from Sean, what about trees that may be affected? So that is a very good question. There are 2 trees. There's some here, and I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, I think there's trees at both ends of here that were fairly close to the crosswalk and here as well. We had gone out when we spray painted these locations for the self-guided tour. We were out with the City of Ann Arbor inspector who is out on, who does a lot of the resurfacing jobs and is out there doing a lot of the construction work and is familiar with how to make things fit or whether things aren't feasible. So there is a chance that the trees here would have to be moved or removed. But the city's policy, the city has a forestry department, and I believe their policy that's in place right now is that for every tree that is removed, either has to be, and that can't be moved safely, has to be replaced. And it may be even more than 1 tree per tree that has to be added. So we are aware that the trees there, they're both fairly small. They're both fairly young, if I recall correctly. And if new trees have to be, if they have to be replaced, they would try to replace them on the same property, so in the same area. So that is something to consider. With the other intersection, the one at Olivia, I believe there was a slight concern, but I remember the inspector had said that they believed it could be done without disrupting anything, but it is a possibility that they would have to replace the trees there. And then we haven't.
There's one more comment about the trees. E. Jones would definitely like to know about the trees before final approval.
Yes, that is something that we can do. A lot of when we put out the markings in the street, and at this point, we do our best to make sure that we're giving an accurate reflection of feasibility or what obstacles we might run into. So we don't do, at this point, we don't do any like specific surveying, but I know that between now and the final plan, we can discuss with the inspector again and see if they can give like a final decision on those trees. So please, if there's more questions, keep them coming. But following today's meeting, we'll post the presentation and the recording to the project website by next week. We'll also post a summary of today's polling and use that feedback with the other feedback we've received to finalize the design plan. I guess I will add, we did receive feedback ahead of this meeting regarding on-street parking. I know there's on-street parking allowed on Granger on that south side there. With the installation of crosswalks, some of the on-street parking would be removed. Parking on a crosswalk is illegal. So once those crosswalks are installed, there would be a removal of some on-street parking, but not all of it, just in that area. So after today, we'll post a summary of today's polling. We'll use all the feedback to finalize the design plan. With the summary, I will see if we can have a solid answer on the trees to incorporate in the summary. Just as a note, it'll be posted to the project website. Once the final plan is ready, we'll post that to the project website as well. We'll also mail the final questionnaire to the project area addresses by May 17th. So that's the next date to look out for. You'll have the option to complete the poll by mail or online, but the deadline to electronically complete it or to postmark is June 5th. That's the deadline for final polling. The requirement to move forward after the final polling is that of those who participate in the final poll, there needs to be more than 50% approval of the final plan. So if 4 people participate in the final poll and 2 support, 2 don't, the plan cannot move forward. It would have to be more than 50%. So in that example, we'd have to have 3 out of the 4 support the final plan. If that requirement is met, what our team will do is then request support from the Transportation Committee at their July meeting tentatively. And then we would submit the plan for City Council approval at the August meeting. And if I can't have an answer on the trees with the meeting summary, we will make sure to have that in there with the final plan. So you can participate in the polling already knowing what that outcome will be. So if you, I will add, if you would like to be on a email list, which is basically me just saying, hey, this mailing has gone out, you can drop your email in the Q&A and I'll save it. The project website is up there that will post the materials to. Oh, goodness, that is not the right project website. One moment. There's a question here, while I fix that, there's a question here that says, do residents in the project area include addresses on Olivia and Forest or only Granger? So the residents within the project area are based on the petitioner who sets the limits of the project area, and any address that's adjacent to that project area plus 100 feet of any intersecting of any cross street is part of the petition resident area. So in this case, I think there are a couple addresses on Forest, but it would not be the entire, it is not the entire block of Forest and Olivia. And I can actually, if you bear with me for just a second, I can add an image that shows. And there's more detail in the guidebook that explains what the limits are and has a as a much better diagram. But you know what? I'll actually just show that then.
Yeah, and that diagram is shown on page 8 of the traffic calming guidebook.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if you Google City of Ann Arbor traffic calming guidebook, it should pop up for you.
How about this? I'll show. Oops. Let's see if this shows up for you. So this is from the guidebook. So the petitioner is the one who determines what the area of interest is, this hatched area here. And then any address adjacent to the area of interest plus 100 feet from where the project street intersects a local cross street is included as well. So all of these properties in reds are part of the project area, meaning they received the mailings, the polling opportunities through like the initial questionnaire and the final poll. Those are the residents that basically have the final say on this specific project in terms of resident support. The areas in blue are either cul-de-sac properties or in some cases we've had properties that are maybe in a back lot. We include those just as information only, so they receive the mailings, but they don't participate in the polling. So in the case of this project, like I said, there are, I think, 1 or 2 addresses that are on Forest, but it's not Forest and Olivia, but it's not the entire block. But that was all. That was this is a very short meeting, but I will relaunch the demographic survey. Please reach out if you have any thoughts or questions that pop up after today, or after we publish the final plan. If you have any questions on that, please reach out. I'm available by phone or email. Just a reminder that the mailings that we send out, sometimes I know in the letter itself, we have the Wade Trim logo, but I just want to make you aware that we might send the mailings out with just a Wade Trim envelope. When I can, I try to send things out using City of Ann Arbor letterhead and envelopes, but it's not always possible. So I just want to throw that out there, that that's our logo next to the City of Ann Arbor's. If you receive an envelope with it, it's likely because of the traffic calming. I don't want anyone to accidentally throw something out. I'd rather you do that intentionally if you want to throw something out from us. But so I've relaunched the demographic survey. If you didn't have a chance to complete the poll before the meeting started, you can fill it out now. This poll is just created by the city so they can help, so they can further their public engagement efforts. If you have any additional questions or comments, I'll keep the meeting open another few minutes. Otherwise, thank you so much for your time, for your participation in this this evening. I really appreciate your care and your interest in this project. As I said at the very beginning, this is a program that's driven by residents. So without participation, without feedback for us to work on, the design isn't as meaningful, I don't think. So again, please reach out if you have questions. If you have anything that you want to add, like I said, I'll stick around for a few minutes. Otherwise, you can sign out, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.